I made an early impressions presentation for the BT16 stuff so far, and of course take everything what I'm about to say with a grain of salt, because again, my word is not law. I am human, so I also can make mistakes. And again, these are just my opinions, so don't go crazy if you don't share the same opinion. That out of the way. Also, I'm not doing any deck lists. If you ask me for a deck list, I'm going to timestamp your comment with this moment in the video, let you know that it is a listening comprehension issue on your side. Keep that in mind. That being said, let me pop over here. So I went through all the decks that I did, and I thought a little bit about the current meta after playing a couple of games with most of the decks. I played a few games. I haven't played extensively with a lot of them. So again, very early impression. Why do this now? So number one reason is because I was in America for the release of this set. Actually, the day that I left to go to America, the following day, the day after that, the day after I left, this set came out. The cool thing is, the early parts of this set still had all of the Numemon stuff and Grace Nova Loop stuff, but now all that's gone. As of January 5th, all that stuff has been finally banned, restricted, whatever, choice restricted, whatever you want to call it. And now we have just the pure, unadulterated BT16 meta with all of the crazy stuff and wild stuff from before gone. And now I think I can, without those decks in the environment, I don't have to worry about like how those change things up. I can take a look at just what the game looks like right now. And honestly, I'm really happy with how it worked out. I don't know if they changed the battle director again, or maybe they, took them a while to get the gears rolling, but now things feel good. Things are strong. There's definitely a lot of strong decks, but I don't think anything is busted. Like super busted anyway. So let's see. So I'm going to talk about these different decks here, these 12 decks. But I'll cover most of the decks that were introduced in BT16. Beginning Observer. I need to remember the name of this set is actually Beginning Observer. Hawkmon, Gatomon, Imperialdramon, Magna Armor, Myotismon, TyrantKabuterimon, Patamon, Armadillomon. Is he Armadillomon in English? Or is it Armadillomon? Can't remember. Fenriloogamon, DigiPolice, Numemon, Ukkomon, Rush. So Numemon did come out in this set, but Ukkomon got a little bit more support, and I think that Numemon can use that. So we'll just lump that in together there. Nightclaw and Lightfang. These cards, they only got like 2 new cards, but those 2 cards are pretty good. So we'll talk about those. Rapidmon Armor, conversing with Magna Armor there. And then the final one is Dorugoramon, which is the one that I'm most interested in. Is it Armadillomon in English? Thank you, Flaccid Pancake. So let's talk a little bit about each of these decks. And when I talk about them, I give my impressions, I have some nice little handy graphics that I think folks might like. So the first one is Hawkmon and Gatomon. So you can see here on the left side, I've kind of like rated all of these decks on a star rating basis. Rating. Whatever that combination of words that sounds good are. So it goes from 1 being the weakest to 5 being the strongest. So in terms of offense, a 2, defense, a 1, speed, a 3, removals, a 3, and ease of use, I think, is a 3. So after playing this deck a little bit, so some of the things that I found that were super, super cool about it. Salamon and Gatomon, like the purple-yellow side of this deck, are genuinely just really good at recycling cards and trash. Even if something of yours gets destroyed, you can always bet on those 2 cards being able to help you recycle the cards in the trash so you can get another thing up as soon as possible. The other thing is that the Hawkmon side of things has Akilomon, and that Akilomon has jamming, and as a level 4 with jamming, and this deck being able to get to it so easily is really nice, and it puts on a lot of pressure in the early game so that it forces your opponent to put something out on board. That was always really helpful because this deck also has lots of effects that destroy other Digimon, and if your opponent doesn't have anything out, then it's hard to do that, right? So in this case, having that Akilomon out there is just a really great way for them to force something out so that you can pop it later with your level 5 or level 6. That Valkyremon is Lord Knightmon support. Yeah, for sure. A lot of folks were talking about that as well. Lord Numemon getting revival. It's good to see it. And the other cool thing is that the mixture, or the combination of Sylphimon and Valkyrymon can actually drop a 15k. Sylphimon's got the on Digivolve. Whenever you Jogrush into this bad boy, you can give one of your opponent's Digimon minus 7k until the end of their turn. And then the following turn, if they were to attack with a Digimon, you can then go into Valkyrie Ace and give them minus 8k. So that's like a blanket 15k to just like pop something. Not blanket, but 15k to pop something. So that's nice. Some of the things that I think were really tough about playing this deck. The first tamer is... This deck, I think you can run 2 sets of tamers. The first one, I don't think... Sorry, the first one I think is always going to be set as the dual tamer from this set. The Yule Kari tamer. The second one, though, is kind of hard. And I don't really know what to run. I tried to run the I think it's BT16 Sora. Felt a little clunky. I tried the Tai and Sora dual tamers, the red-yellow ones. Those also felt a little clunky. So yeah, I'm not really sure what that other tamer should be. And honestly, whenever I had another tamer in hand, it felt kind of useless. So I'm not really sure what to run there still. And also the second part is Valkyrymon Ace has the nice ability where it would destroy something, but if it doesn't destroy something, you get Sec +1. And that's cool because it gives you a way to win the game faster. But it's kind of, how do I put this? It's great that you have a way to attack and win the game more quickly, but at the same time, that ability comes off of an ace card, and that can sometimes be risky, because that means you might prematurely drop the ace card on your own turn, spending the memory, and then later on you have that ace card on the board, and your opponent can target it to get memory back from the overflow. So I like Valkyrymon in some cases, but in a lot of cases, I feel like if my opponent didn't force it out on a burst Digivolve, then I really didn't want to play it by myself. You know what I mean? So those are the things that I thought were kind of tough about the deck. I will say that the level 4s for this deck were sometimes hard to build around. I like the Ukkomon, I like the Gatomon, but like finding those last couple slots were kind of tough. You've seen most people play the Hawkmon line only. Yeah, I've seen some people play Hawkmon. I've also seen some people run like some of the bird stuff mixed in, so like the Biomon for a little bit more, like I think it's the BT15 Biomon for more search. But yeah, I'm not really sure. My line was like pretty basic. My lineup was pretty basic. Again, I just got in this week, so this is like easiest things I could put together or throw together. So yeah, Hawkmon, Gatomon, not bad. A little bit more offensive than defensive, but that still leaves a couple of things to be desired, I think. We might need like 1 or 2 more cards to help this deck out. Let me see, what's the next one? Oh, yeah, if you guys have questions or anything or comments, let me know, and I'll cover those after I go over my little bits here. But the next one here is Imperialdramon. Offense 4 stars, defense 3, speed 4, removal 3, and ease of use is 4. So the things that are cool about this deck is that partition really forces your opponent to fully clear, or they risk just getting hit like 3 more times the following turn. 3 more times minimum, it feels like. Because the partition forces the level 5 into 2 level 4s, and if they don't have a way to clear those things, you basically just like get the jamming XVmon, and then you go right back into your level 5 with DNA Digivolve, attack again, and then if you can go into level 6, you basically just win the game. So that's a really scary situation if they just pop the level 5, partition drops, and then that's it. They have to, I feel like, clear everything on a single turn. Also, Dragon Mode's ability, it almost has, I would call it, I don't know, like Blast Digivolve Plus, where it's allowed to Evo whenever your opponent not only attacks, because there is the Ace card, but also if they were to play a Digimon or evolve a Digimon. So basically, if they make any move on the board, you always have that threat of the big dragon mode or big fighter mode from your hand, which is terrifying. You see the fighter mode here, and he can essentially return anything back to the deck. Yeah, like this. I think his regular Evo effect is that something that has less sources than him gets sent back to the bottom of the deck. And then there's another one, I think, when he attacks, where if it's rested, he sends it to the bottom of the deck. That's pretty disgusting. So yeah, he's got a ton of removal, and like he's like your basic, not basic, but like your strongest removal card. Does the jamming still exist in Imperialdramon? Yeah, because of the XVmon from the EX1 set, he has the ability that if you have, I think it's like free trait or Imperialdramon in the name, he gets jamming. I believe that's the effect. Someone double check me. But yeah. So yeah, lots of very strong things offensively and defensively with this one, or this deck. Some of the challenges though is that right now a lot of decks in the game have big Digimon with protection, and this deck does struggle a little bit to get over the 15k mark, with a few notable exceptions. One of those being the BT12 Imperialdramon to help you boost your DP. The other one being the Vmon that you see right here, who gives you just plus 2k on your turn. You have to kind of like have the stars aligned to get that sort of lineup, but it's possible. But outside of those things being in your stack specifically, you're gonna have a hard time getting over things that are like 15k. So keep that in mind, especially if they have protection. So yeah, lots of cool stuff. The new the new Imperialdramon really does affect or better it betters the deck more than like the old starter deck Imperialdramon, because I think for a long time most folks were using him where you just DNA Digivolve into the starter deck Imperialdramon, return a level or 6,000 to your opponent's hand, and then attack twice. But this guy is really good too. So and also he has partition, which is just bonkers. So yeah, very strong. The offense here is so high because, like I said before, in a single turn you can swing so many times, over and over and over and over. Are the stars rating in a vacuum or WRT the other decks in the meta at the moment? I kind of compared them to relative to the other decks that I covered in this set, or in this presentation. Yeah. So they're a bit relative here. So yeah, Imperialdramon. Also, it's not that difficult to use. It really isn't. I thought it was going to be more complicated with like the effects and the Vmon and the Wormmon stuff and the partition, but it really wasn't. Felt like it was really nice. XVmon with Ray, great point, Flaccid Pancake. I don't really use him that much. I think I tried him out early on, but I didn't care for him. But Raid is actually a busted ability right now in the game. Raid is very strong, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. I actually have a slide specifically for that. The next deck I want to talk about is Magna Armor, and this is like, whew, the new hotness in town right now. So, offense 3, defense, like perfect defense, 5 defense. That's like the highest rating I gave. Speed is 4, removal 2, ease of use is 4 as well. So what's really cool about this deck is that this fella here, the Magnamon X Antibody, the new one, is almost like insurmountable. What is it? Whenever a security is reduced in some way, he unrests, he becomes active, he gains 3,000 DP, and he's unaffected by effects. So he's a 15k, basically unkillable, can't return to hand, can't return to deck. He doesn't even get touched by effects until the end of your turn. And that makes getting around him very, very tricky. The next bit here is that the starter deck Magnamon, the one that was included in the Terriermon starter deck, is actually really good as a removal card and a security card. So the security is like he de-digivolves, and the removal option is that he just source strips something 1, and then something that doesn't have a source he just gets rid of, sends it back to your opponent's hand. Yeah, Shady Water, this is why Raid is so good, because of the Magnamon X Antibody. Like I was saying, Magnamon X Antibody, because he is nearly insurmountable, one of the ways that you can stop him on his turn from activating that effect, because if he just swings on your security, then he's going to become untouchable every single turn. And Magnamon is, like I said before, folks just getting in, he's like an insurmountable wall. If he checks in your opponent's security, or any security gets checked or reduced, he becomes 15k untouchable Digimon, can't be affected by effects for a single turn. Also, he has blocker and armor purge. But yeah, like I was saying, Magnemon X, he is the wall, the Great Wall. So the way to stop him from getting that effect to become untouchable is that you have to either block his own attack so that he can't check one of your security, and then on your turn you can do something to kill him before you check security. However, there is this nice little option card called Blinding Ray. It's a yellow, zero cost option, zero cost, fantastic, which says if you delete or if you remove one of your security from your own security stack and throw it in the trash, you gain 2 memory. And luckily that procs Magnemon's effect. So even if he can't hit your opponent's security on his turn, you always have Blinding Ray as a backup so that you can activate his effect and keep him as that huge wall. And yeah, he is hella annoying to fight right now. So those are the really fun things about the deck. Like, once you have Magnemon down, and it's very easy to get him down, your opponent's going to have a hard time like advancing forward in the game. Some of the tough parts, though. His defense is amazing, but his offense, not so great. He doesn't really have any like super offensive effects, or any offensive effects at all, actually, that really help him win the game very quickly. So the wall, once the wall goes up, that's great, but as long as there's nothing behind that wall, like other Digimon that are just like hitting your security, you're pretty okay. You have some time to like figure out a way to get rid of him. So there's that. He can't kill you. He typically can't kill you quickly. There are a couple of cases where he can attack a little bit faster, but far and few between. So just know that if you do see this guy up on your opponent's side of the board, you always have a chance, or you know, you've got some time to take care of him. So that's the one good thing about this deck. Defense, 5, amazing. Offense, he's using a regular sword. He's, you know, nothing crazy. So yeah, Magnemon Armor is like one of the decks to look out for right now. BT16 is like, he is one of the poster boys. Moving along to one of the lesser known decks of the set, Myotismon. Myotismon is... I had some trouble with this. So offense 2 stars, defense 2 stars, speed is 3, removal's not bad at 3, pretty average, and then ease of use is a little bit more difficult than regular. So ease of use here, 5 is an easy to use deck, and 1 is like a more difficult to use deck. So this guy's got a 2. And what I thought was fun about this deck is that the new, I think, I know I'm gonna butcher this. I think it's Arakunemon? Or Arakunemon maybe? Arakunemon? I don't know. And the Mummymon Tamer, it lets you get to your level 5s really quickly, which is nice. I have a feeling that you might be able to abuse those guys in other engines. I think you might, because they give you level 5 very quickly. And so you can get to level 6 that has a really strong effect and then probably use that. But these guys let you get to your level 5s really quickly, which means you can go into your Imperialdramon or Myotismon in English, I think it is, really, really fast. And the new Myotismon, I gotta get my English translations here correct. He gives purple some welcome Tamer destruction. I think a lot of other colors right now have some way to like mess with Tamers, but purple I think didn't for a while, so it's good to see purple get something here. So don't correct me if I'm wrong, but is this the first purple Tamer destruction? I think. But yeah, he has that nice little bit to destroy Tamers, which I think is great, especially for getting rid of those like pesky memory setters. So that's nice. And some of the things that I thought were tough, and I think that the level 4s for this deck, like building for some level 4s was kind of tough. Maybe my build here was just a little weird or off. But I had a tough time choosing some level 4s that were impactful for the deck. I ended up running like what is it, like Devimons, like things like this, like the starter deck Devimon, and I think Raremons. But outside of that, I don't really know what else to run. The second thing was that having to destroy your Myotismon Ace with the Arakunemon and Mummymon Tamer in order to get a Imperialdramon or Myotismon out is kind of nasty, because you have to essentially give memory away through the overflow to get your level 6 out, which kind of don't feel good, you know? And again, this might be just the way I built the deck, and I could have built it wrong. Again, I am very fallible. But yeah, having to get rid of this guy, like your little, there we go, having to get rid of your guy who's going to give your opponent memory to get your big boy out kind of sucks. Ah, yeah, you guys are right. The Lucemon Chaos Mode did pop Tamers. I forgot about him. Maybe we won't forget about him very long once EX6 pops. Because I heard that he might be the move there. But yeah, I think that of all the decks that I'll talk about today, my Myotismon is probably the one that I need to like go back and take a look at the build, because maybe I just built it wrong. But we'll see. The next one is TyrantKabuterimon. Now, we talked about how we talked about how Magna X Antibody is the poster boy for this set, or one of the poster boys for this set. TyrantKabuterimon might be like his cousin. Very similar effects, but a bit different at the same time. So, offense is 2. Again, offense, not that great. Defense, though, perfect defense. To the point where I think that he's sometimes harder to get rid of than the Magnamon X Antibody. Speed 3, not bad for this deck. Removal 3, he's got pretty decent removal. I mean, green is typically a color that wants to like attack on board it wants to attack on board as its form of removal. It of course can do that with this deck, but there's other ways that they can get around stuff as well. And then ease of use, I've got 5 stars. I think this is a very, very easy deck to use. And honestly, if you're jumping into Digimon and BT16 is like the first set or one of the first sets you played with, I definitely recommend this deck. It's pretty cheap to build. Maybe the Tentomon is gonna run you a couple, and maybe the TyrantKabuterimon. But outside of those two, I think the deck is actually pretty cheap. Maybe you can go ham. Maybe you don't, in the early builds, you don't need to use training cards or, the training cards. You can use something else. But, yeah, I think the deck is pretty easy to build. And yeah, it's honestly, as a person who built the Kabuterimon deck as their green deck in the last set, and I was super hyped for him. Again, Tentomon was one of my favorite cards. One of my favorite Digimon. It's good to see another type of bug in the form of the Kabuterimon stuff get a lot of cool stuff and a little bit of time to shine. Some things that are really cool about this deck. TyrantKabuterimon, the 14k level 6 here, can easily reach 20k DP on an opponent's turn. Now, I think in the past, it was always the case that you could get to like 20k or 18k on your own turn, but doing it on your opponent's turn was nigh impossible. This guy makes it so simple to do. And the new Meta Life Kawagamon gives you the Izzy effect from BT14, where you can redirect attacks into one of your Bug-type Digimon or Insect-type Digimon. So, if you take all of that and then you compound it with TyrantKabuterimon's ability to, first of all, become a 20k on your opponent's turn, as well as prevents your opponent's Digimon's effects while he's rested, it's super nasty. So he basically becomes untouchable by your opponent's effects or Digimon effects, 20k, and you can redirect stuff into him. Not much gets through him. Not much at all. Maybe Greymon if on a good day, but not much else after that. So those are the good points for this deck. Some of the things that I thought were tough were, like Magnamon X Antibody, the offense for this deck isn't super great. If you do want to like put on more pressure for offense, you have to rely on things with overflow, like there's an Ace Grandis Kawagamon, I think it was. Was it Ace Grandis Kawagamon? I forget the actual name of that card. What is it? Let me just go through the list here real quick. Yeah. Oh yeah, the Grand Kawagamon here, the Grand Kawagamon Ace. So he gives you security attack +1. It's one of your Digimon, and then I've also seen some builds use a couple copies of the Lopmon from the Terriermon and Lopmon starter deck, and they use that and give the TyrantKabuterimon Alliance, and then he just swings for like 21,000 or like 17 or 18,000 with 2 checks, and typically he's not going to die, so that's okay. But outside of that, it's not that easy to put on a ton of pressure. But really, outside of that, there's not much I can say that's difficult for this deck to do. The speed is great, the defense is amazing, the removal's pretty good, and it's so easy to use because you don't have to worry about a lot of the complexity of the game. as long as your bug is rested, pretty much no opponent's Digimon effects touch him. Or yeah, none of the Digimon effects touch him. Options are a different story. The one weakness that he has that Magnamon X doesn't have is that Magnamon X is not affected by anything. TyrantKabuterimon isn't affected by Digimon effects only. Unga Bunga Bug Gang, absolutely. So, another deck with really strong defense. So, moving along, speaking of another deck with defense, is the Patamon Armadillomon deck. So, this one, offense really leaves a lot to be desired. I put 1 here. Defense is actually not bad, though. Hawkmon is a great defensive card. Speed is also a little bit slow, and I think this is not due to the upper end of the cards, but I think it's due to the lower end of the cards. The level 3s, level 4s, I feel like they're missing something. It feels like they're missing like some keystone to really like put the deck on the map. Removal's not bad. This deck does typically use like the Vikemon level 6, which is insane, and then Hawkmon's removal is also not bad. It's pretty what's the word I want to use here? Novel. So it's hard to get around this kind of removal. And the last one is ease of use. It's not bad. It's pretty average, honestly. If you can play the red-yellow Hawkmon Gatomon deck, then you can pretty much play the Hawkmon deck as well. So what I thought was really, really fun about this deck, I didn't actually have a lot to say. Because, again, this might be personal bias, but I'm more of an offensive player, and Hawkmon with the Patamon Armadillomon is a wholly defensive deck. So I didn't really vibe with it too much, but I will say that having Hawkmon down, once you DNA Digivolve into him, and then you have the threat of a Vikemon in your hand, is always scary for your opponent. Basically, they have to like just hold out on that turn. They can't really mess with the Hawkmon, and if they do make a move, Vikemon comes down and just ruins their board. So there's that. Some of the challenges that I had, there are lots of defensive effects. Everything from some blocker to having reboot, barrier, stopping your opponent from making attacks to the player directly. But generating offense was really, really difficult. There's like not much in the deck to really help you generate offense outside of something like, I think the level 4 Angemon helped you to unsuspend a level 4 or lower Digimon, and that's assuming that your level 4 lower Digimon could attack security and then live somehow. You could play the Angemon or Digivolve into the Angemon, and you could unsuspend it to make another attack. Outside of that, there's not really much here to put on a lot of pressure to like go through your opponent's security very quickly. The second thing is that outside of Ukkomon, so the Ukkomon for this deck that was introduced in this set, he has blocker, but outside of that, there's no other way to give blocker to any of your Digimon. So on the off chance that you have a Digimon on the board that didn't come from raising, it just won't have blocker. With the exception of the Angemon that I mentioned just a moment ago, who also has the ability blocker, but it's just him, and he's 4K, and he's not living. So, yeah, there's that. He also doesn't have blocker in Inheritance, so once you use that Angemon for fodder to DNA Digivolve, you lose blocker. I wish that there was like a Tamer or another like card that gave blocker in Inheritance. That'd be really nice for this deck, I think. Let's see. That's Patamon Armadillomon. The next one is Fenriloogamon. Yeah, alright. So our first like super offense deck of the stream. 5 stars. I typically reserve this for what do you call it? Typically reserve this for decks that can OTK, and Fenriloogamon can definitely OTK. So 5 stars on offense, 2 stars on defense. This deck does have a little bit of blocker, does have some ways to stop Digimon, but not many. They're pretty basic tools. Speed is not bad. Removal is fantastic. Again, if you've seen some of the newer Loogamon cards, the Hellugamon and Solugamon cards that came out in BT16, as well as Fenriloogamon, you know that this deck can remove some pretty nasty stuff on the board with very, very, very minimal effort. And ease of use, I would say, is a 2. I think a lot of folks, when Fenriloogamon initially came out, had some trouble like getting all the steps down to actually like make the correct play. But now, at this point, I think it's much easier. But we're kind of having to relearn the like the steps to like make the OTK happen, because there are a couple different things in play now. It's not as simple as like play your Black Tatomon, attack, alliance, and like basically just win the game. It's because you're typically running a lot more red purple cards and more of the SOC stuff. It's a little bit stranger. So you see people have started adding in things like Numemon. Numemon's really good for this deck, but you have to know like the steps to get Numemon set up to do everything right. So what's fun? OTK potential still alive and well. In a meta, I think is very heavy with in a deck a meta that's really heavy with like defensive decks. Fenriloogamon is like the sword that pierces those shields. Like I said before, Numemon is actually really good. So, like you would set up previously, you would set up multiple Black Tatomons in the trash to get like multiple rushes, attacks, whenever they were played from Fenriloogamon's effects. You can now get 2 level 4s down, swing with Fenriloogamon, alliance with both of them to rest them, and then go into Numemon with DNA, and then pull another Numemon out of the trash. That the first Numemon will give the second Numemon rush, and then it can attack. So there's some really cool stuff there, and of course you've got the partition effect, which is even nastier. So yeah, Numemon's changed up the game a little bit, but I think he makes the deck overall better. I mentioned before, this deck does have Alliance. Alliance might be the best effect that was released last year. I said initially it was Raid, but after looking at Alliance, it's so flexible. Multiple attacks if you can unsuspend, allowing you to pump up your Digimon temporarily in order to get over like huge threats, something like TyrantKabuterimon or a big Magna Armor X antibody that is like 15k or plus. Alliance does the trick. Some of the things that I think were harder or sort of challenging about this deck were the... So Fenriloogamon has that effect where you have to destroy something on your opponent's side of the board in order to unsuspend. And typically that was really easy. Not a lot of things had super crazy protection, but now that's not the case. A lot of things are getting protection against Digimon effects, and so it's harder and harder to activate that unsuspend effect because you have to destroy something if you can't destroy it. So, something to think about, and your opponent can definitely play around your Fenriloogamon turn by trying to leave something up that's not indestructible by effects, and it's going to really put a hamper on your game plan. So yeah, Fenriloogamon, if you liked him before, you'll probably still like him. There's lots of good stuff that SOC's been getting, and the deck has definitely started to morph bit by bit as we get these new pieces from each set. So moving on, DigiPolice. They only got like 3 or 4 more new cards. They didn't get a lot this set. I will say, disclaimer, like right off the bat, my build that I tested with did not include the new Darkdramon with the new Chaosmon. I cannot... How do I say this kindly? Again, just a build decision. My build decision. But I cannot justify removing copies of other like D-Brigade or DigiPolice cards to make room for like the 1 or 2 copies each of a Bancho or boss card, and the Chaosmon. I feel like I have to cut either option cards, and I think that especially right now, DCD Bomb is a very good option card. 4 cost, can de-digivolve, which is amazing against things that have partition, and it like really hampers things that are aces, because aces have lower play cost than normal, so it's easier to target those cards. And I just can't give that up for like a unlikely Chaosmon or unlikely like Bancho or boss card. So again, my build did not include the new Darkdramon and the new Chaosmon. So this is like a wholly like DigiPolice / D-Brigade style card. So going over the stats really fast, offense was a 4. Again, this deck is pretty offensive. It always has been, probably always will be. Defense, not that great. I mean, once you get your Brigadramon up, then it's better, but outside of that, pretty meh. And a lot of your stuff is wipeable by lots of effects right now. So speed 3, pretty average. I could probably bump this up to a 4. But I just set it for a 3 here. Removal is really good. I say the removal is really good because of the comments other folks have just made, and that is that the new TyrantKabuterimon for this set is amazing. On play, on evolve, look at top 3 cards for every D-Brigade or DigiPolice card. You can reduce your opponent's Digimon's play cost by like 1 for each of those cards that you open up, and then you can destroy something that's 4 costs or lower. The cool thing is that cost reduction for all your opponent's Digimon lasts the entire turn. So if it's still your turn when you drop this TyrantKabuterimon, something like a DCD bomb is going to be able to hit stuff that costs 6. And if you reduce like a 9 cost Digimon to 6, then you can take it out with a DCD bomb. Even if you can't de-digivolve it. So this plus the fact that like Brigademon also takes out a total of cost 7 Digimon on your opponent's side of the field whenever it's evolved into, makes this guy really useful in a lot of cases. Also, he has an insane effect. His inheritance is whenever you would play a DigiPolice or D-Brigade card, I think it is, you can de-digivolve one of your opponent's Digimon. That's a both turns effect, and it doesn't have to be by effect. It's just if you just play a card. So if I were to just like play a Commandramon on my own turn, just hard play for 3, I can de-digivolve something 1. Insane effect. Insane. Yeah, like I said here in the second point, it's very, very disruptive. Some of the challenges is that right now, it's great that this deck can go wide. I think it's very important, and it's a way of or style of play that's not seen a lot right now in this current environment. But the one weakness it does have is that things like Death Xmon, just eat it alive, as well as blanket DP reduction. So for example, you're thinking of things like Valkyremon Ace, which drops everything by 5k. The what is it? The Rapidmon X antibody, the new one, that if anything's rested, it just gets blanket minus 4k, as well as, of course, Shine Greymon Ruin mode. So, yeah. If you have a bunch of guys out and your opponent's playing purple, or they just happen to run Death Xmon, I mean, that might be your butt. Something to keep in mind when you're playing. The next one, Numemon Ukkomon Rush. This is a deck that got a little bit of popularity. I think a lot of folks were talking about it. Yeah, Fenriloogamon as well, D-Paladin, my bad. Talking about the DigiPolice, that blanket DP reduction. Yeah, Fenriloogamon does it too, yeah. Let's see. Like I was saying, so Numemon, Ukkomon. At the end of the last set, last like month or so, Ukkomon got pretty popular as a card that you can slot into aggressive decks and make them more aggressive. And there was this one, I think it was the DCD or DC1 Championship, one of the official Bandai tournaments held here in Japan, and a guy who was running Numemon with Ukkomon before the BT16 set dropped actually won. And that kind of put some folks' eyes on the deck. And now that BT16 has dropped, and they got even more Ukkomon support here, it's only made the deck better. So, offense 3, probably put this at a 4, honestly. Maybe 3 is okay. Offense 3, defense almost non-existent. They do have some things like Armor Purge, but it's not super insane. You can Source Strip and then get rid of the card. Speed 5. This deck is so fast. It's I'll talk about it in a moment, but it feels like very momentum based. And once they get like those 2 turns that they need, it's really hard to stop this deck at all. And also, it's incredibly memory efficient, which like trying to choke it out kind of is hard. Removal, not so great. I will say the top end of this deck is actually pretty vile. You'll see things like Venusmon, Ruin mode in this deck as well. They might run a couple copies of Death Xmon. The upper end of this is absolutely disgusting. Ease of use 3. I mean, it's a pretty aggressive deck. If you can just kind of go fast, go hard, then things are okay. I think it gets a little bit more difficult once you have to go into the top end of the deck with level 6s or level 7s, because you don't run a lot of those cards, but you run a couple copies just for situations that might arise. And so knowing when to use those cards in those correct situations, I think, is the hard part of this deck. Alright, so some of the fun things. Like I said before, new Ukkomon gives resource and aggression. So the new Ukkomon here lets you, whenever Digimon is promoted from racing, you can search your deck for, search your top 3 cards for something. That's not like a once one-time thing either. Every single time a card would come from raising, you get that effect if he's on the board. Additionally, he lets you hatch an egg as well. So yeah, he keeps Digimon on the board, he keeps Digimon rolling out. He also gives you more search, so you can find stuff that you might need. Like I said, it's super memory efficient with tamers. Take for example the Platinum Numemon up there, like just Digivolve and like gain 2 memory. Okay, like it basically becomes a one-cost Digivolve. And like I said before, it's a pretty momentum-heavy deck, so once they get started, it's kind of hard for you to stop unless you find like a DeathXmon or something that's like really useful. I will say some of the challenges playing the deck though were that it's very weak to wide board DP reduction, very similarly to the DigiPolice deck that I just talked about. Like outside of like the Monzaimon and like this one Platinum Numemon, the deck's like DP is pretty low to the ground. So that's something to keep in mind. If your opponent runs something like Rapidmon X, you might want to keep this Digimon unsuspended. That way they don't die when they get rested. The other thing is like it's momentum based, so that's a double-edged sword. If you were to, if you're going to get the momentum, if that momentum gets cleared, it's really hard to make a comeback after that. By that time, your opponent has caught up, and it's pretty much over. So yeah, keep that in mind that like if your opponent stops all your momentum with something like a DeathXmon, or someone mentioned before, I think Crimson Blaze could be really bad, or a Rapidmon or Rapidmon X, it's gonna be kind of tough to claw your way back out from a deficit. Can they win before the wall decks drop their walls, or do they still win despite them doing so? When I played, it was mostly like before they could get set up, and the one hard part about that is it's more doable against TyrantKabuterimon, but against the Magnamon deck, I think it's really tough. Magnamon X, because they can essentially skip the level 5, they can go straight from a level 4 to a level 6. They're a little bit faster than what you might normally be used to. So yeah, keep that in mind. Like TyrantKabuterimon, because they go from a 3 to, they have to go 3, 4, 5, 6. Not so bad, but you might have a harder time with Magnamon X because he is like the absolute wall. Heaven's Judgment doesn't work because Magnamon X is not affected by any effects. So yeah, not just Digimon, but any. So I will. That's been my experience though. If anyone else has another one, let me know. Yeah. You do miss the Shin Monzaimon builds. Monzaimon X is really good. As far as removal is concerned, like outside of the high-end stuff, I think he's pretty good removal. Basically like dropping something for 2k for every Digimon you have on the board, and because his deck does go wide, it's typically going to be like 8,000-10,000. Though we are unblockable though. Oh, you mean with like something like Cootie Kick? That's fine, I suppose. Huh. That's a great rulings question. If your opponent has a Digimon that's unblockable, can it be blocked by Magnamon X? I guess, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, Plastic Pancake. That's a great question. I don't actually know the answer to that. I need some judges out here. It can't. Sorry, in this case, what is it, Chris? You gotta tell me what it is. Is it, the Cootie kicked up Digimon, or is it Magnamon? It's affecting the attack? I don't know about that. It cannot block? Okay, I'll take your word for it for now. That's just... I wonder what the wording on Cootie Kick is. Does Cootie Kick say this Digimon gains the effect, can't be blocked? I wonder. You can block unaffected Digimon in the same fashion. Therefore, so Magnamon X can't block because Magnamon X's effect isn't affecting the opponent's attack. Okay, that kind of makes sense. All right. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, Shady over on Twitch. Last fire plus any lingering DP reductions get rid of Numemon if you didn't check security on your turn. Keep in mind the Magnamon's effect rolls over until the end of the opponent's turn, so you would have to stop them from attacking or reducing their own security using something like Blinding Ray to pop the security off the top to get the effect. So, yeah, he's got more than one way to skin a cat. But let's see. We were talking about Numemon, Ukkomon. Thanks for the info, though, folks. I appreciate that. But yeah, I feel like, to, I guess, sum up there, it feels like it's really tough to stop Magnamon next because they can skip a level 5 and just go straight into the level 6. So once he's up, I think it's a little bit harder for Numemon and Ukkomon to seal the deal. Although, I mean, you do have the option of going super wide, so maybe if you have the foresight to just start going crazy wide, just like hard playing Digimon while going in on Ukkomon and raising, maybe you give yourself a better chance to win, but yeah. Very, very powerful stuff. Alright, so next up is the new Nightclaw Lightfang stuff. They only got 2 cards, which you see here. The first one being the Agumon, who's like a searcher, and he gives your opponent security minus 3k. Which you might be thinking, oh, that's cool, you know, when I attack now, I have a higher chance of living, thanks to this Agumon. But you don't really need that effect if you just have the Gatomon, who's like, both players draw a card, and then if your opponent has 8 cards in hand, you gain a memory on Evolve. But also, his inheritance effect is just jamming. All those Gatomon players who were mad that they took away Ukkomon, here, this is for you. That's your guy right there. That's your man's. Please enjoy. But Nightclaw Lightfang, so offense 4, I think it's pretty. Once it gets to level 6s, I think it's a very, very strong deck because you can just loop multiple attacks and unrests. Defense leaves a little bit to be desired, since you're really operating off of like 1 stack. Speed, pretty quick. There's something really nice about the inheritance effects of the level 3s and level 2s that let you to like take cards off the top, put them on the bottom, and gain memory or reduce cost of Digimon you would Digivolve into. So that's really good. Removal is so-so. What is it? There's like the level 5 red one that lets you pop a 5k or lower, and then like the level 6 red guy lets you destroy anything that's has less DP than him if you check a security. And then the ease of use is so-so. I think like learning like when to do what is the hard part of this deck. Like knowing what cards to use at what level, and then like how to plan a turn out so that you get to the place you need to be at the end of the turn, and also keeping your stack alive. I think that's the hardest part. So some of the things that I thought were pretty fun playing this deck is that Gatomon jamming and Agumon search are really just what the deck needs. Before they had the 2 search cards in level 3s, with Agumon here, like it's much easier to go through the deck and find the cards you need. So you're not really running like these weird things. I guess you could run something like a searcher, like the white searcher card that we had before. But yeah, Agumon I feel like fills that role way better. Some of the other things that I thought were cool. I don't know. I thought about this before this deck came out. I thought it would be a cool idea if you could like take Digimon from the top of the stack and put them on the bottom, or like vice versa. And it's cool that that's an actual style of deck in this case. So I think that's just really fun, and like going up and down that stack it's pretty cool. I don't know. It feels good when you're like playing this deck. Some of the things that I think were tough is that because you typically operate off of 1 stack, if you lose that stack, like you've most likely lost the game. So keep that in mind. You were operating on a very, very fine line, like a razor thin margin. And unfortunately, this deck doesn't have too great of like ways to keep your Digimon around, so you have to be really careful. Your racing area is a very, very, very safe place. Let me see. So that's pretty much Nightclaw Lightfang. Yeah, only 2 cards, but I think they were the exact 2 cards that this deck needed. High risk, high reward. I suppose so. I mean, you can mitigate some of that risk, right? Like maybe just holding off for a turn or two. Finding a tamer early on is also really good. Because that way you can set your memory to 3. And if you have 3 memory with this deck, you can do a lot of stuff in a turn. How often do you go into Grace Nova in your opponent's turn? I always found that Grace Nova is never like the, okay, I'm going to use Grace Nova and win the game. It's more like, shit's about to hit the fan. I can see it in the distance. Grace Nova up. The problem is, like, you lose that Digimon. Oh, wait, no, it becomes Grace Nova. Never mind, you're fine. But yeah, like, anytime you were to see something coming on the horizon, like, you're like, alright, it's time to Grace Nova up. And hope for the best. But yeah, because normally you can just, like, go into your level 6s, the blue and the red, and you can alternate attacks, like, with Security Attack Plus and Unrest and win that way. So that's Nightclaw Lifefang. Hope you guys enjoy this deck once it drops over in the West, because it's a pretty cool deck. I don't think you guys are gonna have you guys won't have the Agumon and the Gatomon just yet, but like just playing with the deck feels really nice. Let's see what else. Rapidmon Armor. So we talked about Magnamon Armor before, but Rapidmon is like the other side of like the BT16 coin. So offense 4, really good offense from this deck. Defense, meh, not so great. There's actually not a lot of blockers in this deck. I don't think there are actually any, are there? Maybe outside of the Rapidmon? Yeah, I don't think. Hold on a second. Yeah, okay, I'm not tripping. There's not a lot of blockers in this deck outside like the Rapidmon, so your big boy here is just gonna have Armor Purge, which is kind of scary. Speed is pretty quick. Like the Magnamon X deck, it can skip the level 5s for the most part. Like, level 5s are pretty optional. There are some in this deck, but you don't have to use them if you don't need them. As a result, that frees up space for other really good cards. Removal is pretty good. Outside of having just, like, instead of having just really big removal, it has, like, that wide removal we talked about before. Things like a blanket removal, where something similar to Shine Greymon Ruin Mode or a Valkyremon Ace, something like that. With a bit more strings attached. We'll talk about it in a sec, though. And easy use is, I think it's a pretty easy deck to run. So what's fun about this deck? The double Armor Purge Rapidmon plus Gargomon Ace, it really feels like you always have an out somewhere. Because, like, even if they destroy this Rapidmon here, unless it's through DP reduction, or, like, sent back to the hand, I suppose, whenever it would just be destroyed, you just go into the level 4, and you can go right back into the level 6 the following turn. So, and it's only 4 costs, whereas the Magnamon X is 5. This is only a 4 cost to skip your level 5. What's also nice is that this deck got the new Tyrantamon X, who can reduce the cost of your Rapidmon Digivolves. Also, he gives you Piercing. So, I feel like he's like the one card that the deck really needed to be really, really busted, and they just said, here you go, you can have it. And then finally, like I said before, you can choose to skip a level 5 in this deck. There are level 5 Rapidmons, like the green-black one, which does have a really useful effect of not being able to be destroyed by effects, I think it was, and he has de-Digivolve, which is nice. And so if you find yourself, really having trouble with some big Digimon that can be de-Digivolve, then maybe keeping like 2 or 3 copies of that guy in the deck are pretty useful. But yeah, you can go from a level 4 to level 6 in this deck for virtually no penalty. So there's almost no reason to go into it. What is your take on using Double Typhoon in this deck? Yes. Yes. Yeah. 3 to 4 copies minimum. It's been a... Double Typhoon is a great card to just search out stuff and then get free. Like, this deck also can run a couple copies of Lopmon. And in that case, you can use the Rapidmon X with a Lopmon to gain Alliance. And because you have the Tyrantamon X antibody in your sources, you also have Piercing. So you can pierce something and just check 2. Yeah. So, all the more reason to run a couple copies of Double Typhoon. Trust. So some of the challenges with this deck where it is So lots of great effects. Rapidmon X on Evolve, you rest everything your opponent's out of the board, and then everything that's rested gets minus 4k. And then he can attack. So that means even if it goes over your opponent's side of the turn, you can still attack. Which is, I guess, I don't know why they just didn't give him Blitz. That's so weird they didn't write Blitz, but it is what it is. So yeah, everything minus blanket 4k, and he can attack. But that means if they're over 15,000, it's going to be tough for you. So there are a couple of cards that give you plus 1,000 DP and Inheritance. One of those is, I think, the Rapidmon from the starter deck. I think there's also a Terriermon that gives you plus 1,000. Could be tripping there. But I think there's a Terriermon that does the same thing. So yeah, you're going to need to have these cards in your sources in order to make that, to get over that 15k, or sorry, that 16k wall or more. And when you look at something like TyrantKabuterimon, I don't have an answer for you. It's 20,000 DP against the Rapidmon X is like, ugh. Hope you have a Heaven's Judgment, is basically my answer in that case. So, yeah, anything over 15k can be a little bit problematic. Breezy XE, thanks. Yeah, so Terriermon and Hawkmon both give 1,000 when suspended. So you would, when you would make the attack, you just get the plus 2,000 from both of those. Yeah, Tyrants are kind of problematic. Again, anything over 15k. Sometimes on your opponent's turn, if you're running like a Black War Greymon deck, it could be problematic. But I mean, to be fair, you just eat aggressive, like wide decks alive with this guy. So that's the trade-off, right? Again, Rapidmon very strong. Again, like if Magna Armor is the poster boy, Rapidmon's the other side of the coin. He's right up there with him. Last, I think this is the last one, but this is a deck that I'm actually the most interested in right now, and it's Dorugoramon. I didn't think much of the deck until I played it a little bit. You'll see across the board here pretty average stats. I tried my best not to be biased here. I think this deck is really interesting, but I tried to grade it fairly, so to speak. Offense is like pretty much all of its stats are pretty basic. I don't feel like it. How to say this? I feel like decks that are, you know, the Rapidmon Armors or you know, Fenriloogamons or TyrantKabuterimons or Magna Armors, they have some way to quote-unquote cheat. You know, in the case of like skipping your level 5s, becoming untouchable and like 20,000 DP, could kill you in a turn. When you look at something like Dorugoramon, it doesn't have some like insane effect, but it does have some really cool effects that you can bring together to make a pretty interesting deck. The first one being the new Kosuke card, he gives you piercing and blocker, but most of the new Dorumon stuff for this Dorumon line has collision. Outside of level 3, I suppose. Level 4, level 5, and level 6 all have collision, which, for folks who aren't aware, collision is the new keyword effect in this set, where when you attack, all of your opponent's Digimon like magically just gain blocker, and they must block the attack with something. So they have to block. And because he's got piercing from the Kosuke Tamer, he's always going to hit. And the cool thing is, a lot of the Dorumon stuff gives you plus 1,000. But on the case that you would die, this deck breathes life back into Dex Dorugoramon, where when Dex Dorugoramon dies, if you have 5 cards with Dex or Death X in their name in your trash, you can just hard play Death Xmon from the trash. So it gives you this big scary Digimon who has, like, you know, Alliance and not Alliance, but yeah, it is Alliance. Excuse me, I'm tripping. Kosuke gives Alliance and blocker. My bad. Whoa. I think I misquoted or misspoke before, but yeah, Alliance plus piercing plus if I die, a Death Xmon comes out. It's kind of scary. So it's nice to see some use out of the old Dex Dorugoramon. And he's also removal. I didn't realize that. He has like destroy all of the lowest cost or lowest level Digimon on your opponent's side of the board, or DP. He's one of the 3. Lowest something. So again, not anything super crazy, but I think the effects come together in this deck that make it really interesting. And yeah, like imagine killing your opponent's your boss Digimon only for a Death X to just drop because of that. Oh yeah, sorry, I wasn't done here, my bad. Some of the challenges though, it's kind of difficult to get to the threshold. Having 5 cards with Dex or Death X in your trash is not that easy. There actually aren't a lot of cards in the game that have that in their name right now. So there's Dex. It's like the level 4 and 5 that I forget the name. Level 4s and level 5s that Alphamon used to use to go into the same level. It was like the Dex Dorugoramon and Dex Dorugoramon, I think it was? Yeah. So there's those 2, plus Dex Dorugoramon. I only run 2 copies of that. And then there's another card called Dex Revolution, or Death X Revolution. It's a purple option. That card counts toward the limit. Lets you Digivolve from trash for free. Or not for free, but for 0 cost. The option card is 0 cost, but you pay the cost of the evolve, but you can Digivolve from trash. And Death Xmon. So those are like the only 4 cards in the game right now that have that keyword. So yeah, it's kind of hard to set up. The second challenge for this deck is removal only really exists on the top end. The bottom end has like floodgate removal in the form of the SOC Lugamon that thing came out in BT16. Or was it EX5? It was one of the 2. It's the purple-red one that dropped after the original one came out. And again, that's only like 3,000 in lower DP. But outside of that, level 4s and level 5s, not really. Level 4s have blocker, level 5s can get you level 6s very quickly, but the level 6s are what have the removal. So if you're behind, you kind of have to hope for the new... well, hold on. I say that, but if you're behind and your opponent has a wide board, drop your Dexmon or your Death Xmon. But if they don't have a ton of Digimon on the board, you have to kind of struggle to come back and build the stack up in order to get like removal out. So something to think about. Again, this deck feels very fair. It doesn't do anything that I think cheats. So I want to talk right now about thinking about the entire set as a whole. If I take all the decks out there and all the games I played, it really feels like I actually like early impressions. I like the way everything is shaping up. It feels like there's a lot of cards with really cool effects, but at the end of the day, DP is the most important thing in the game. Like, DP is the most important number in the game. And it's very like a might makes right sort of meta where you've got things that are either A, big and powerful, but aren't super offensive, so TyrantKabuterimon and Magna Armor, or they're really offensive, but they're not very strong. So like the ankle biters in things like DigiPolice and Numemon. And then you've got like the super strong decks that don't have really good defense. So Imperialdramon being able to unsuspend and attack again with jamming multiple times, and things like Fenriloogamon who can abuse Alliance, as well as the new Numemon to get tons of checks and clear the game pretty quickly. But again, their defense is so-so. Because of that, like this nice, I don't know, it's like the 3 major styles of play right now, it feels very balanced. Like the armor stuff can typically, how do I say this? The armor stuff beats the fast and wide stuff. The fast and wide stuff beats the OTKs. The OTKs beat the armor stuff. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. But the cool thing is, and I feel like people are going to groan and roll their eyes when they hear this, because the defensive cards are so strong, they're so powerful right now, again, the most important thing right now is the number on your DP. And because of that, Greymon might actually find a nice little like spot in the game again. Where in the past couple sets, Greymon really hasn't been a big thing. I played it throughout those sets, and I will admit that most of those were Anubis and Apocalypse, which were dumpster fires. But outside of that, decks like Fenriloogamon still do a pretty good job against Greymon. But now that we have like 20,000 DP, 15,000 DP that are unkillable by effects, but you can punch through them, I think Greymon has a really nice little niche that he can fill. We back to caveman ages. Unga Bunga Swing. I don't know. I feel like there are merits to both the red and black Greymon again as well. So red gets really big, gets punched for like 4 security. Black being able to black is cool because of the way the effects line up, right? So Magnamon Armor keeps his invulnerability until the end of your turn, but Greymon, Blackboard Greymon X Antibody unsuspends on the reboot, and he can pop something on your opponent's turn. So he like just slots into the right spot to pop a Magnamon Armor or Magnamon X Antibody. So that's really cool. I like the way the interaction works. So yeah, Greymon Gaming, Greymon card game. We're back, baby. Red Hybrid, yeah, Red Hybrid does the same thing, right? The only issue with Red Hybrid is that there are cases where you may not get that destruction effect. You'll become like a 21,000 Kaiser Greymon, but you can't actually destroy the opponent's Digimon. You have to run into them. Which means we can all expect people to start teching in that little Flamon that gives you piercing. Oh. Arena's Evade. Oh, you're talking about D-Paladin. You're talking about Black Orc Greymon X Antibody? Yeah. I'm sorry. But yeah, Greymon might find a spot out here just by virtue of the way the actual other decks in the meta shape up. That'll be cool. And that's my TED Talk. Thanks for coming. Yeah, that's it. I'm very happy I was able to finish this up. Again, I thought that this would be a really good video, but I figured, I haven't streamed this year, and I told myself that I wanted to stream more, bit by bit, so this is one way to do that. Also, I can't fall asleep, so works out perfectly, I suppose. That being said, any questions? I'll take questions and comments now. Anybody in the audience have a question? Please raise your hand, and we'll get someone to give you the microphone.